Good evening, folks. Triple Crown here, coming to you from Vancouver, British Columbia. Continuation of the Global War 1939 series, special units. The topic of this episode is, I'm very excited about, introduction of one new unit, that is the Escort aircraft carrier, and also we're going to be talking about the regular aircraft carrier and battleship. Now, the escort carrier is something that, maybe one of the units that I'm more excited about bringing into the game. I've always wanted it to be in the game, so very excited about that. And just doing a little bit of research on the United States and Second World War at the end, just sheer size of their fleet, still impressive to this day. A total of over 6,700 ships, so 6,768 warships. In total, 28 aircraft carriers and 71 escort carriers, so a total of 105 aircraft carriers in total. Cruisers 72, submarines 232, destroyers 377 destroyers. I mean, that's just amazing. And the escort carrier, if you look at the size of them, they actually had, United States and the Allies actually had quite a few in the Second World War. So historically, there were quite a few used in the Second World War. What was their role? It was more or less of support of the convoys, feeding ships in the Pacific as ships were going back and forth to resupply. And obviously had aircraft, so as everybody figured out how important aircraft were, so it was important to have that air cover. And also in the Atlantic, the aircraft were not able to fly from London or Nova Scotia or New Brunswick and cover the midpoint of the Atlantic. So aircraft carriers allowed the Allies to do that and go on the hunt for submarines. So aircraft carriers played a large role in sort of the transition of how naval battles were fought, because they allowed all of a sudden airplanes to be anywhere in the ocean at any time. In battleships, obviously World War II was sort of the area where battleships sort of transitioned out, although they still had a role. And there were still some very impressive battleships in World War II, which, the Yamato being one of the front runners for one of the ones people still like to talk about today in terms of historical, and people are still in awe of this, the Yamato battleship. And I'm just going on here. Okay, so a few changes. The Yamato and the Iowa class sort of rules, they were in the original 1939, are still in. So the Yamato, I believe, is available in turn 4. Japan can purchase 1 per turn for 24 IPP, and I believe it absorbs 3 hits. The actual statistics are going to be on the setup chart card. But just so you know, it's still going to be in the game, and the rule for the U.S. having the Iowa class battleships starting, I think it's turn 9, and basically all of their battleships turn into Iowa class battleships, and they don't absorb 3 hits, but I think they attack and defend at a little bit better. So that's how that works. And why I wanted to have these units together was because I wanted to identify capital ships. Now, what is a capital ship? Well, a capital ship is a battleship or a aircraft carrier, but not an escort carrier. So an escort carrier can be built at any factory in the game that is a colonial factory, minor factory, or major factory. However, capital ships can only be built basically at a capital. The United States can build capital ships at their factories in San Francisco, New England, and Washington. Germany can build them, I believe, in Western Germany. The UK can build them at London or Liverpool. And the Russians can build one at Archangel. So or the Karelia factory. So really, there's not. That's historically accurate, and I think we wanted to keep that. We didn't want nations building aircraft carriers in Cairo, or the Italians can build them as well. I apologize. So I don't have any aircraft carriers on display here. But you cannot build aircraft carriers in Siam or Calcutta in this game. So some people like to do that, but historically it never happened. And obviously the shipyard and infrastructure required to build an aircraft carrier was pretty significant. So we did not want to allow that to happen in this game, which is also why we introduced the Escort carrier, is because it allowed the smaller nations like Canada or Australia to still have an aircraft carrier, but one of a smaller nature. So historically, a lot of the Escort carriers were lend-lease from the United States to the Allies, but we couldn't get everything perfect, but we tried to get as much history into this as possible. Now, the battleships are still going to, I believe, attack and defend at 8 and move 2 and absorb 2 hits, and when they are damaged, they will be able to move 1 space. And they have to go to a naval base to be repaired, and I believe that used to cost money, but now we're just going to say that if you're at a friendly naval base of your allied side, and when you're at war, the capital ship, whatever is there, repairs. So the next turn it'll be repaired. So that's how that's going to work. There's no more rolling dice for how much damage was there. It's just going to automatically repair. Escort carriers only absorb 1 hit. And aircraft carriers attack and defend. So aircraft carriers are going to have an attack value now, but not against other naval units. They are only going to fire against aircraft, attack and defense. So what does that mean? Well, if there's no aircraft in the battle, well, aircraft carrier does not get to roll dice. And it's not a AAA in the sense that it shoots down the aircraft before battle takes place. Basically, if an aircraft carrier, is defending at 4 and it's attacked, it rolls a dice at 4, and if it gets a hit at the end of the battle, one of the casualties will be an airplane. So, and the same on attack. The attack, I think, aircraft carriers attack at a 2 against aircraft, defend at a 4. Escort carriers, I believe, are a 1 and a 2. Now, historically, the escort carriers did not have a lot of armament. I'm aware of that, but we wanted to give them a little bit of something. So let's go through some of the sculpts. A lot of these are HBG, so some of them are out of box. This is the an out of box German aircraft carrier. I think this is the Zeppelin, I believe it's called. You can see I've got magnets on mine. I've glued them on the bottom. This is the Bismarck, so a little bit of a weathered look. This is another sculpt available at HBG. Now, just in terms of sculpts, if you don't have escort carriers. Now, Germany can't buy escort carriers. I believe only the Allies and Japan can. But if you want, if just in terms of reference, the original Axis and Allies could use escort carriers from the original game because they are a little bit smaller. So if you're looking for a sculpt to use, you could go with that as your option. For my main key aircraft carrier in the game, I like to use the from HBG the Kaga. I just like the size of it. I like the deck of it, and you can see the other side of it, and it says Kaga on the bottom of it. So pretty cool sculpt. And you could use the original Axis and Allies as an escort carrier, or this is the Ryu, I believe, the Ryu escort carrier. So you can kind of see there. Now battleships, because you need 2 for Japan, I use the Fuso, I believe it's called, battleship, which is really from HBG. Pretty cool looking sculpt. Lots of detail going on there. And I just want to show you folks the original out-of-box sculpt versus the one HBG cells, just the size difference. You can see quite a bit more detail on the bigger sculpt. Even though the smaller one is painted, you can see the sheer size, how big the Yamato is, which I think is pretty cool. I believe this sculpt, I don't know who it was painted by, but I won that also in St. Louis. So for United States, they have so many different options of battleships that you can purchase from HBG, and some very, very cool sculpts. the last time Gargantua was over, I had this is on display. That's the Tennessee. You can see compared to, that's the Alaska, just how much bigger it is. The Tennessee obviously being a more World War I style battleship, but just how fat it is. I mean, it's just, and the detail. That's just a cool looking battleship, and that's the Alaska. And I believe this is the, I'm gonna draw a blank now to look on the bottom. I think it's the South Dakota, which is another cool sculpt from HBG. So lots of different options of battleships for the Americans. And the carrier that I use, I'm gonna confess, this is a 1941 sculpt out of the, which is, I think, is a Russian carrier, and I like it because it sits flat and it's wide, so it's able to hold a lot of planes. Another sculpt that I do use is the Essex class, which is an HBG sculpt. You can see it sits quite a bit higher, and it's not quite as wide, but that's the Essex class carrier. Got magnets drilled in the bottom of it as well, or drilled little holes. And this is a Casablanca Escort carrier from HBG, kind of a cool sculpt. And basically the Escort carriers were like almost like a cruiser with the deck put on it. Some of them are even almost like a cargo ship with a flat deck put on the top. So this is the out of box original Axis and Allies carrier. So you can see the size. Just wanted to show you the difference. Lots of cool aircraft carrier sculpts for the British. I believe this is the Malta, which is, I think I've shown that in another video, but just a very cool looking aircraft carrier. And this is the Eagle. Love this one. And this is the Ark Royal. So those are some of the British carriers. And the Casablanca, because it was, the America lend-lease and built a lot of the carriers, you can use the Casablanca class for the British. And these are this is a Rodney. I like the look of the Rodney battleship. Kind of has a distinct, just the way the guns are more in the front half, and the back half is where the structures are. And this is an out-of-box also from 1941. So yeah, that's all of the ships, folks. Hope that explains a conclusion of the naval units in 1939. Now, just thinking, this is the last video I'm probably going to shoot today on Remembrance Day, and we are 78 years post D-Day, and just a little bit of a reflection, thinking about the Eisenhower quote the night before the D-Day invasion, when he started off, soldier, sailor, and airman. And I'm not going to go into the whole speech, but the last line kind of sticks with me, where the eyes of the world are upon you, and the significance of what he said, and how 78 years later, just how today I think a lot of us who enjoy these games, or people who, just a lot of people really still, I believe are, what's the way to put it, sort of appreciative of those who sacrificed so much so that we did not have to. And yeah, I think, when Eisenhower said that, I think almost what he meant was, we are depending upon you, because that was one of those key points in history where, if it had not gone the Allied way, where would we be today? So want to give thanks to everyone who has served, and whether it was back in World War II, or now if you're a police officer or a firefighter or anybody who's in service, acknowledge you today and thank you for your service. I'll conclude here. Thanks for watching, folks, and stay tuned.